What's up, engineers? Indie Dev Dan here. So I thought it would be cool to take a step back from our normal type of video and kind of go back to the root of this channel where we just sit down and we just build, let's write a skill from scratch. I've been building software for over 15 years, and I've been building with language models since GPT 3.5 was released, back when we were running Aider, the original AI coding tool. I've written thousands of prompts by hand and even more with agents. So I think it's important to always ask the question, why are skills becoming more important and more popular? Skills let you deploy prompts and code against any problem in a consistent, reusable way. In this video, we'll showcase exactly that. In this video, we'll be building a fork terminal tool, and we'll break down why that's important, why that's valuable as we progress. This is a real raw agentic coding video. I don't have a flashy demo for you. There's no spicy hook to get you into this video. I really want to go back to the roots of this channel as we kind of push into the end of the year and into 2026. So in this video, I want to raise the stakes a little bit, and I want to show you how you can build a skill from scratch. So I'm not going to use any existing agentics. I'm not going to use any existing agent orchestration frameworks. We're just going to use a raw agent, and we're going to write prompts by hand. The only thing we're going to do is use a couple code snippets. Before I even start touching the computer, start touching anything, using agents, using generative AI, using orchestrators, I go back to the fundamentals of engineering. I think and I plan. So the first thing we're going to do here is just push the laptop aside, okay? We never start by just blasting out prompts. We start by thinking through the problem we're trying to solve. So I have a whole stack of notebooks here that I just fill up over and over and over. And I've got a whole box more. You can get this off Amazon, pack of 20 for, I don't know, 20 bucks. This is an engineer's true most important tool. I'm definitely on the agentic engineering train. I think the future is all agent forward. I think that's all great, but I think none of that matters if you don't begin with the end in mind, if you don't actually fully understand what you want to see. So I like to just start by writing. So the first thing I do when I'm trying to build something new, down to a skill, down to a prompt, is I understand what's the purpose, what's the problem, what's the solution? And of course, the solution that you're bringing to the table is your perceived best solution. There's always a better solution. There's always something else out there that you're going to miss. That's okay. You have to start somewhere. Beginning with the end in mind for engineering work, that often means defining the concrete output structures, right? The assets that you're going to generate. When you sit down, there's going to be a beginning of your session, and then there's going to be an end. At the end, what will you have that you didn't have before? What is your deliverable? So here we're going to have a new agent skill. Okay, so we can just start writing out that exact file structure. I'll throw exactly what I'm writing here on the screen. You'll have a nice overlay here. My writing is kind of ass, so I want to give you a nice clean representation to look at. So we're just going to start by writing out the structure of this skill. Of course, we have the .claude skills. And then we have the meat of it. So I like to call this the pivot file. So what is everything kind of centered around? It's always centered around, as you know, the skill.md file. So this is where we define and progressively disclose how this skill works to the operating agent. So a couple of key kind of consistent directories I build underneath my skills. I like to have this tools directory. And so your tools are your single file scripts, your command line tools, your entire programs. You can put whatever you want under your tools, but these are of course the commands we're going to give our agent to extend its capability. Sometimes you don't need new tools, other times you do. We're going to use one in particular. We're going to use a fork terminal Python script. And I like to use Astral UV. I think the industry agrees with me on that at this point. They just have the best Python tooling. So that's going to be our single file script structure. So what else do we need? We're going to need prompts. Prompts are the most important piece of it all, right? Our skill, our prompts, even code, you can truly consider as prompts. Remember the core four: context, model, prompt, tools. This is what we're building. Skills encapsulates the structure against a specific use case very well. But remember, everything always boils down to that. So we're going to have a concrete prompts directory. And what we need here is a fork summary. And I'm going to make it super clear here, user prompt. So this is not a system prompt. We're not building a custom agent. This is a simple user prompt, and it's going to fire off inside of this system at some point. Okay, so we have a tools directory, prompts directory, one more directory we need, and it is what I like to call the cookbook. And so what is this? This is additional documentation on a per use case basis. So this is where we're going to start progressively disclosing new information to our agents given the incoming prompt. So in our fork terminal skill, what is this going to do? What is the purpose of this? It is going to start brand new terminal instances, and we'll have our agent kick off either a raw CLI command, so an FFmpeg command or a G-Cloud command or an AWS command or whatever services you're working with. You can run a raw CLI command, or we're going to have it kick off a new agentic coding tool. So we're going to focus on the big three: Gemini, Codex, Claude Code. Once you have the cookbook and this structure in place, you can add any other tooling and capability that you want here. So we're going to bundle a ton of stuff here under CLI command, and this is going to be a markdown file. And again, these are all really just prompts, right? But we're going to add some documentation here to teach our agent how to operate, how we want to fork terminal windows and immediately run new CLI commands inside of that fork terminal window. Okay, so what else do we have here? So we of course have Gemini CLI.markdown. So this is going to be responsible for kicking off brand new Gemini CLI agents with a forked terminal. And so this is why we have that prompt here, right? Fork summary. So we're going to summarize the existing terminal and then fork it, hand it off to a new agent, right? And so same thing, right? Codex CLI.md, and we're going to have, of course, Claude Code.md. And thinking through this, I think this is all we'll need for this skill. In terms of like system design and product design, typically you always want to aim for that first version, right? That proof of concept, that MVP. In my mind, you know, it's like proof of concept comes first, and then you get to the MVP. Sometimes these are the same thing, but oftentimes the proof of concept just says, okay, this idea can work. There's something here. And, you know, that's a yes, no node where you can just stop building if something goes wrong there. But then after that, you get to the minimum viable product. Here, we're just going for that proof of concept. We want to just get everything up and everything working. And of course, once we build this, I'm going to host this on GitHub publicly. You'll be able to access this. It'll be cool because you'll see the full process here beginning to end. So this is our fork terminal tool. And again, the purpose here is to take an existing agent that's executing and to have the ability to fork a brand new window. We're either running brand new CLI commands, or we want to kick off brand new agentic coding tools and effectively fork the existing conversation. This is our setup. Now that we have a plan, now that we have a full-on purpose, we understand that this allows us to fork conversation windows. It allows us to offload context to new agents or just offload processes to new windows. So that's what we're building. That is the purpose, problem, and solution. Our solution here is to build a reusable skill that our agents can deploy. So now we have the end state, okay? We have begun with the end in mind. We know what we want our agents to build for us. This is the most important step. If you're constantly relying on agents, on documentation, on other things outside of your own mind to accomplish work, you will be completely dependent on these tools. You're seeing this more and more day after day. Engineers' brains are rotting due to this incredible technology. And to be clear, I haven't written a single line of code in over a year now, with some small exception probably, right? Agents are doing that. But the point here is to always understand what you're asking your agents to accomplish for you. The point here is to always have a plan, right? Have an end state. Define your end state. Those who plan the future tend to create it. So here we are. We have our plan, nice and simple. You know, we can always add more documentation here. We can always revisit this. But let's go ahead and start building. Let's move this, right, the raw idea, let's make it a reality inside of our tooling. So let's get started here. I'm gonna throw that over there, and let's pull back our technology and get into this. So brand new code base here, right? Terminal, projects, make dir. This is gonna be a fork terminal, skill, CDN. I'm going to use cursor here. Use whatever IDE you like. Everything is converging on agents. So the UI you prefer doesn't really matter. And you can see here we have a blank directory. All right. Now I'm going to close my shades a little bit because I can't really see. Right away, we can start handing off work to our agent. We're going to, of course, boot up the best agentic coding tool. A lot of the actual prompt writing that I do is just in a blank file. So, you can get out of the environment, open up a blank file here to write your prompts. So I'm just going to rewrite that directory structure we had. So .claude/skills, scale.md, tools, fork terminal. And as I'm working through this, by writing this structure out, by thinking through and planning things, I'm priming myself, right? When your agents are building it out for you, you can quickly see, is this right or is this not, right? You'll be able to quickly understand and execute against the end state that you're looking for. Hopefully that makes sense. So prompts, fork, summary, user prompt. I like to be super clear when I'm writing user prompts that are just going to be one of many, or the system prompt, which is just one of one, right? And then we have our cookbook. And here we'll have our CLI command. And here we'll have our Gemini CLI, Codex CLI, Claude Code. Great. We have access to agents. Let's let the agent do all this for us, right? Build this, and we can do better than this. Hold on, let's back up here, right? So we also have get ignore. We also have am.sample. We have readme, and this looks pretty good, right? We'll say Python defaults. And here we'll just set up the default variables. So we'll say Gemini API key, there we go. One of my favorite use cases for Cursor is I do love their tab completion model. They have the best tab completion model. They've been working on this for years. Huge fan of this product still. This is still, one of my favorite IDEs. I go between VS Code and Cursor. This looks great. So we're just gonna fire this off and I'll just say build, use empty files, okay? And so we're gonna have our agent just build out kind of a basic structure here. To be super clear, what type of agentic coding are we doing? We are doing in-loop agentic coding. Our presence is the highest, our effort is the highest, our tooling capability is also the highest because we're operating right here in the loop. There are many ways to operate your agents now, many cloud tools. Those are considered out-loop agentic coding tools. More and more in your existing code bases, your production code bases, you want to be operating out the loop. There's no reason with agents for you to step in here and fix small bugs or do small chores. We talk about this a lot in tactical agentic coding. That's one of the pillar ideas. Of course, our agent is doing all this stuff for us here. Let's go ahead and do a get init branch main. Okay, just get everything set up here in the foundational way. So it's just generating the file structure for us here, right? Just as requested. Okay. Fantastic. So now we're on our main branch. Let's go ahead and dial into the most important piece of this, right? The actual skill. We're building this fork terminal skill. So what does this look like and what's the kind of crux of it? Because once you build your skill.md, right, your primary, what I like to call pivot file, it's what, all the work is centered around. Once you build this, everything else starts to fall into place and you can really scale up your impact by throwing agents at the problem. But like I said, I'm not using any meta prompts, no meta skills, no agentics, no orchestrator agents, right? I have a ton of tooling where I could have few shot at this entire thing. I want to walk through the whole process here with you. Let's build a skill from scratch. I highly recommend you set up some prompt code snippets. So I have this snippet for writing skills, AGSK. And if I activate this with control space, you can see we have this skill structure. Okay, fork, terminal skill. And we're going to describe what this does in one sentence and describe when the skill should be used in another sentence. Okay, Cursor has some opinion for us. Let's let it tab. Perfect. That looks good. And we're going to use this when user requests fork terminal, or we'll also do create new terminal or new terminal. Something like that, right? I like to be super clear with how these get written, all right? And so the purpose here is to exactly fork a new terminal session to a new window using raw CLI command, okay? So I like to have a variable section here. If you've been watching the channel, tuning into some of the work that we do, this is a common agentic coding prompt minus the cookbook. All right, so the cookbook is a new pattern I want to share with you here. I want to have kind of simple enable flags, so enabled, or say enable Gemini CLI, and then we'll just go down the line and then enable raw CLI commands. Okay. And we can just actually make these raw booleans. That should be fine. I want everything enabled. So you can just come in here, enable, disable stuff, right? Let's start with just spinning up a command via the raw CLI. And so the trick here is that we want brand new terminals. And so when you're operating on Mac devices, we can do this with something called OAS script. And to kind of showcase this, I'll spin up a new Claude Code agent here, and we can just prompt exactly what we want to happen in the skill. This is a great way to set up for building your skill. Have your agent just run it in the loop, write the prompt, observe the result, and then encode it in a skill. We can do something like this. Use OAS script to open a new terminal, immediately run ffmpeg help. And so this is going to showcase initial basic result that we're looking for. Okay, so in the terminal here, if we scroll up here, we should be able to see what we can just search ffmpeg. And you can see this is the command that ran. And as you can see here very clearly, it opened a new terminal for us. So this is the idea, right? And so we can encode this inside of our CLI command cookbook. Now, we don't want to just throw, like the lazy thing to do here is just to default quickly to throwing the agent at the problem. Let's work one step at a time here. And I want to showcase how you can really use the progressive disclosure. In our instructions, I'll just start writing exactly what I want to do, and then we can improve it as we go on. So based on the user's request, determine which tool to use. And we'll say, follow the cookbook to determine which tool to use. And so the first thing we're gonna do here is define the structure. So you can see here we have if, then, and then examples. So we can route this work. So we can do something like this, right? I'll create a new section here, raw CLI commands. If the user requests a non-agentic coding tool, then read, and then we'll route right to this file, copy relative path. I'll say read and execute this prompt. Okay. And so simple if, and then we have some examples here if we need it. So we can say something like this, right? Examples, just a few really simple examples. So we can say create a new terminal to XYZ with ffmpeg. And then we can exactly with curl and XYZ with Python, right? So just something like that, right? Some simple examples to get our agent started. The first thing we want to do is get to that proof of concept, prove that this works. Let's just keep this as simple as possible. So the workflow should, in essence, follow the instructions for the first version. So we'll say something like, understand the user's request, follow the exactly, execute the tool. 3-step workflow, super concise. We should have a almost operational skill here. So one additional thing we want to do is we want to build out this fork terminal skill. I want this to collapse into a concrete Python script to spin up a brand new terminal window. So I'll actually prompt this work here to have our agent build this out with the knowledge in its context window. Update. We'll use the syntax here, fork, astral uv single file script. It's important to know the cutoff date of your language model. I know that Sonnet 4.5 has seen the astral uv documentation, so I can reference it just like this. Use setup subprocess to kick off new terminal with specific command. And then what I'm also going to do here is pass in a function definition. All right, so I'll say fork terminal, and I'll use the Python keyword. So now the agent knows, right? This is an information dense keyword. We're using information dense keywords all over the place. Update, right? Astral UV single file script that references existing tooling, subprocess. It might seem simple, but when you call these specific keywords out, it has a lot of information embedded, all right? Command. And what else do we need here? Fork terminal command. Maybe this is good enough to start. I feel like something's missing here though. Let's just start with that. Always return some string. A couple of like lagging instructions, concise, minimal, possible working version. So it's gonna build this Python file. And again, we're just constantly working toward that V0, that first version. And for all the engineers, you know, I'm not trying to race you here. This can be done very, very quickly. I'm just kind of walking through the process, walking through how you should think about building skills, because there is going to be a skill that you want to define in a very specific way for great reuse. And you're going to want to know how to walk through this step by step. All right. And so here we go. This looks great. Again, simplest working version. And what I want to do here is add another instruction here, or add another workflow step. So first, understand the user's request. Second here, I want to say read, and we want to direct to this file. Okay, to understand our, and so we always want to execute the at least for this first version, we want to execute this right here. And so I'm going to be very, very specific with what I want done here. I'm going to be very prescriptive, right? I want it to execute this exact command, okay? So there's no confusion here, right? A lot of what you're doing in your skills is you're eliminating, when you're writing a great skill, you're eliminating confusion. One thing we missed here, we want to make sure that our variables actually work. If user request is a non-agentic coding tool, and exactly, this is true, then do this. All right, and we should be super clear here in our purpose. So our agent knows the exact steps. I want to say follow the instructions, execute the workflow based on the cookbook. All right, so I just really want the agent to respect every single section that we're operating in here, okay? This looks great. We actually should have a first working version after this, all right? And if not, we have something that our agent can iterate on. Let's go ahead and fire this off. We might need something a little more intricate here for this, but let's go ahead and see. No dependencies up here, that's fine. Let's go ahead and run this. So I'm gonna spin up a new agent here, so that it is aware of this agent skill. We can always just see all available skills, right? In fact, we can throw this into a prompt if we wanted to. This is kind of a, one of the foundational prompts that you can build out. We can write something like commands and just build out some simple reusable prompts to help us operate here. All skills. List all available skills from your system prompt. Okay, and we'll boot up a new agent and then we'll type all skills. And now we should see our skill come in here, and I have no available skills. So you can see here, I've actually written the skill in the wrong format. You probably saw that long before I did. Let's fix that. So we can write fork terminal. All right, and then we can move everything inside of that. There we go. Let's rerun that. All skills. And this is why we test and work step by step. There we go. We have our fork terminal skill. Okay, let's go ahead and run this. All clear. Fork terminal, run fmpeg help. And so all we're doing here is we're getting to that proof of concept level, all right? And so you can see here, I have the directory structure wrong. I actually need to come back into the skill and update that since I was using the wrong reference path. So skills, and I'll just start typing this out. And of course, cursor to the rescue here, all good. And let's go ahead and reset and execute this again with the proper directory structure paths. There we go. So getting that basic working example going. Oh, and it looks like this is actually still the previous version. This is something that I wish the Claude Code team would work on. The skills here, they're not updating live, right? So I do have to actually clear out my entire session here and then up once and then run this again. The actual paths here were not fully updated. There we go. Now it has that updated skill.markdown file after a full Claude Code instance refresh. You can imagine it's doing this because on boot up, it is actually loading the metadata and therefore the rest of the skill somewhere right into the prompt. So, okay, so we have a new terminal window open and it's not popping this up automatically. So I'll just type terminal here and you can see this exactly. So again, we have both of those windows. Let me actually close these to make it clear. Open it again, run one with fmpeg help and one with, we'll do Claude help. And this will start to push us into our next cookbook file. Okay, it ran Claude with help and not dash dash help. So again, we'll just run that one more time. Dash 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 dash. I just want it to be super, super clear. I want to see that this is truly working, right? And then we'll open the terminals, close these. There we go, right? This is our Claude help. Looks great. So this is working, all right? So we have that proof of concept. We're opening up new terminal windows and then we're running a command. One thing we need to do here, we need to be super clear here about running this on Windows versus on Mac. So we'll let the agent handle that. Let's hop back to this window, update this, add support for Windows versus Mac. And so I'm actually looking for some Windows-based tooling. I need a Windows sandbox, ideally, so I can quickly validate on both devices without having to open up my Windows machines. And so there we go. We have our simple system. This looks right? We're doing Darwin, Windows, looks like the right Windows command. PowerShell might be the better route here, but that's fine. We can always come into this file, test, improve, so on and so forth. I want to improve this workflow a little bit. I want our agent to always understand the command we're trying to run before it kicks it off. So what do I mean by that? Every CLI, every proper CLI comes with this dash dash help, right? So for Claude, we can do dash dash help and it gives us a bunch of information. You can do this for Gemini CLI. You can do this for any tool, or sorry, just Gemini. You can do this for any tool and get an understanding of what's going on. So thinking from our agent's perspective, wouldn't it be useful if before it ran something, it got a dump of the help and then started executing? And what we're doing here is we're trading off speed and context for better performance, right? Because the agent might not know how the Gemini CLI works. I think this is especially good to do for new tools that are changing, right? The Gemini CLI, Codex, Claude Code, right? The CLIs, the help docs, they're changing, right? The agents don't have this in their model, right? In their understanding of the world. And so what we want to do is encode that into the skill. So if we open up our cookbook, go into CLI command, right now it's just operating on its best judgment. What we want to do is give it some more rules to follow. All right, so I'll use AGP. This is my agentic prompt, and it just kicks off a great prompt structure. A lot of this we don't need, so I'm going to drop this down. What we do need is at least instructions. And so here we are executing a raw CLI command, and instructions are here. Let's go ahead and just drop down to just the instructions here. So before executing the command, run command -- help to understand the command and its options. This should just help us operate CLI commands. So nice and simple. Notice how I'm not trying to look for the most complex solution. I'm trying to do the opposite. I want the simplest working version that gets our agents operating properly, right? That does the job for our agents. So now our agent is going to read this file before it starts. So let's just go ahead and see this in action, right? We'll go ahead and boot up this new terminal, curl, google.com, and we'll just fire that off, right? So this should be enough to activate the skill. There's the raw CLI command, and here's the google.com, right? Okay. So it sees that we're not using an agentic coding tool that we've listed. So it read this documentation. There it is. It's first running help to understand how this works. And now it's actually just going to boot this terminal up. And okay, so we got access denied here. Let's see if this works. There we go. Okay, great. I need to actually open up permissions on that file. There we go. So if we hit terminal here, we can see that we have just curled Google. Okay. Things are working. It's listening to the instructions, working step by step. Let's go ahead and scale this up, right? Let's push on to our agent files. So how do we want our agent files to work? We want to open up brand new terminal windows with prompts executed. Let's first run this in the loop inside of a terminal. We're going to open up a brand new instance here. Never be afraid to just start fresh. You always want that fresh context window. So I want this to kick off a brand new Claude Code terminal running the Haiku model, and I want it to run in YOLO mode. I'm starting to set up how I want this to run exactly in a new terminal. So let's run a version right here. Run Claude help to fire a new terminal, prompt the Haiku model with ping. So that should be it. Let's see how this operates. So first, our agent is learning how to use this, right? It's learning how to use Claude. We're then using OAS script to fire a new terminal, and then we're going to prompt the Haiku model because it's seen the help docs. It knows it can just look for Haiku. It's actually starting to look at the skill. I don't want it to do this here, so I'm just going to stop it, ignore the skill, just run this directly. All right, so you can see it has the documentation, right? It ran that -help, so it knows how to run this. So if I open up the terminal here, there we go. We have our Haiku model automatically kicked off this ping prompt, right? And it did this with -p. Okay, so it is running this in non-interactive mode. This is a good start. We can encode this now. What I'll do here is I'll copy the CLI command because I like this as a starting place, and I'll open up Claude Code, paste this in, execute a Claude Code agent, create a new to execute the command, run help docs. So I do want it to understand the documentation. And now I'm going to add some rules here. So how do I want this agent to operate Claude Code? I want it to always use interactive terminals, leave off -p. I'm going to add a variable sections here. Fast model, we'll just say Haiku. Base model, that's going to be Sonnet. And soon we're going to have our powerful slow model Opus. For now, we'll just keep rolling with this. I'll also say default model Sonnet. For the -m model argument, use default model if not specified. If fast is requested, use the fast model. And then we can say the same thing, right? I'll just go ahead and add this. We know it's coming, so I'll say heavy model, Opus. And then exactly if heavy, use the heavy model. All right, this might be all we need, right? Because we're teaching the model how to use the tool with --help, and then we're giving some details about how we want this to operate. The one other thing, I pretty much always trust my models here, so I'll say always run with Claude --help grep danger. There we go. Dangerously skip permissions. Our agent is going to see this. And then what we can do here is come to this documentation and add the other cookbooks for our other use cases. And, to be clear, what we're doing here, this is like code-based structure, right? This is ultimately additional resources. This is how we're really pushing on the progressive disclosure abilities, right? But I like to call this cookbook because we're kind of showing recipes for when to use each specific set of tooling. Claude Code. And then shout out to Cursor, that their autocomplete is insane. If the user enters a Claude Code agent and enable Claude Code is true, then we do this, right? Then we read the Claude Code docs. Some examples are always helpful, right? Just 3 simple examples. Fork terminal, use Claude Code to XYZ, right? It doesn't need to be super detailed, but you just want some, notion for how things work. Fork terminal, spin up a new terminal, request XYZ using Claude Code. Okay, there we go. That looks great. And now since we're here, we have established a pattern. So we can do this. Let's see how Cursor inline does classic Command K prompting. I'll say continue for Codex CLI and Gemini CLI. Mirror this. All right, so let's see how cracked this is still. Looks great. Looks great. All right, we got everything right. That's exactly what we were looking for. You can use prompts everywhere. You can use agents everywhere. It's all about accessing more compute to get the job done. So fantastic, right? We have all of our docs, our cookbook properly routes and progressively discloses information to the right place when needed. And we can just double check this, right? Claude, Codex, we turn regex search on, and we have Gemini. Fantastic. So this looks great. And we have everything enabled. Let's go ahead and try this, right? Let's see how we can spin up a brand new Claude Code instance, not quite forked because we don't have our summarization prompt yet. We're getting to that. Let's go ahead and spin up a new instance. You can see this is a very common pattern I do. You want to start fresh. It's easy to know what your agent has seen when it's seen nothing. Okay. Let's go ahead and close everything else. We're trying to kick this off. Let's see how this skill works. Fork, terminal, new Claude Code. And then I'm going to place this in quotes. List your current working directory. So we're going to invoke the fork skill. It's reading the documentation. It understands we want a Claude Code instance. So there it is. We have a conditional prompt, right? That's what progressive disclosure is. It's conditionally looking at additional documentation. This is in fact a conditional prompt. And there we go. Our help command is running. And now we're going to fork, and it's running with those exact settings that we requested in the instructions. Okay. And now it's working on a brand new terminal window, right? And we're starting to see why this is useful, right? I just took some work that I wanted to do, moved it to a new terminal. We can hit terminal here, and we should see this working. There we go. There is another issue here. We're always opening up to your root directory. I want all my forks to open up against the exact same window. So we're just going to prompt that. Update this, ensure we open the forks to the current working directory. And it's been a while since we've committed code, so I'm just going to run my hotkey here, GSDC. It's just going to commit everything with a simple progress message. If you've seen any of my repos, you see probably tons of these. There's that. I just want to commit that so that if something goes wrong, we can always revert with Git. So we're at a good place where there's actually interesting work worth committing. And then we can do things like this. We can come into the terminal, git diff, see the work done. You can see here that we are first going to CD into the current working directory, and then we're going to do the work. That looks good. I'll leave this agent here since it has the context of operating this. On a micro scale, I could have done all this with a single agent, but this is just good practice, right? It's great agentic coding practice as you're spinning up agent after agent after agent, working on problem after problem after problem. You want fresh context windows. You want them to be focused, all right? New window. Okay, so if I run PWD there, you can see we're in this fork terminal skill code base. Now I'll clear, and then I'll hit up a couple times, and we should get back to that fork command. List your current working directory. Let's fire that off. This is working here. It understands how the tool works before executing, and now it's going to kick it off. All right, there it's running it with UV, and we should probably add some documentation around preferring Astral UV. But we have a fork. Let me go ahead and open this up here. And where's our new window here? I'm looking for this new window. I don't see it. And so what might be happening here is, you can see here we're only capturing STD out. We probably want to capture everything. Not getting any results. Make sure we capture an error and catch if something goes wrong. Keep it simple. All right, so something here is not working. Our agent can't see it. We're not getting any result back from executing this script. And so we want to make this code more agentic so we can get concrete output every time it runs. There we go. So this time we got an error. you can see SED error. We have more agentic code, right? Our agents can understand what's happening. Now we're going to do some string replacing, it looks like, which looks a little complex. I don't like that. We definitely always prefer something simpler, but let's see how this looks. There we go. All right, so Claude Code worked through key escaping issues for us. That's good. We probably will want to simplify this at some point, but let's go ahead and see if this works. There we go. You can see here we have a brand new terminal. Which one is it? Not this one, not this one. That's our old one. It's this one here. And if we run pwd, you can see we are in our directory that we were looking for. So this looks great, right? You can see current working directory with the files. So this is working, right? So what are we doing here? We're building up a skill that lets us fork terminal windows and add specific information, right? We want it to fork windows in a specific way. So what I want to do is have our agent do this same work for Codex and Gemini, right? Just like how it wrote the cookbook instructions for Codex and Gemini. So we'll have a brand new agent here, and I should start cleaning up my agents at some point. Understand, skill. And so this is where a prime command starts becoming useful. And we can quickly, simply build that out here with prime.md, AGP, agentic prompt. I'm just building a simple prompt to help the agent understand how to operate this code base, right? Understand this code base and report your understanding. Read, or we can actually just do this, right? Use this direct syntax, read the README, and then I'll say this here. I also just want it to read everything. So I'm going to say, read the entire cookbook and tools, continue with @syntax. Using some cursor here to leverage in editor prompting. That should be good. So now we have a new agent. Let's close. Let's reset. Let's run /prime. And now we're just going to read everything, and our agent should be good to go with operating this. It should report its understanding now, and then we can start prompting against this, right? So just a quick way to get your agent up and running with everything without bloating up a memory file. You can see here that we have the raw CLI and the Claude Code integration, Mac Windows support fully integrated, but we don't have Codex or Gemini. So let's go ahead and fix that. Mirror Claude Code and build out Codex and Gemini. All right, so I'm just using @reference here to move a little faster. And then I'm going to say this, before you start, understand the CLI. We want the exact same version of Codex and Gemini like Claude has. And, to be specific here, I'm saying default models, help, YOLO mode, and yeah, that should be it, okay? Once you have an existing pattern, you can scale it with your agent. So I'm gonna run which, and then we're going to run the help commands. And now what we should see here is the equivalent versions for both Codex and Gemini CLI built out. And so it probably is having some trouble here figuring out which models to use. Exactly, yeah, so it's not sure what models to use. So I'm gonna stop it here, and I'm just gonna be really specific, right? I want that new Gemini 3 Pro model for Gemini. Use Gemini 3 Pro Preview as base. For fast, use, I think it's Gemini 2.5 Flash. Let me just open up the Gemini CLI here quickly to make sure that I'm right about that. If I go to models here, okay, Gemini 2.5. So we're going to say 2.5 Flash. For Codex, same deal, right? We need to specify the exact models we want to use. And we want to use this model is base. And fast is, what do we want for fast? Model. Let's go ahead and use 5.1 Codex Mini. So just going to copy that and paste that. This is something that we could have, solved in the planning step, but it's fine. We're working here in the loop anyway. It is important to note that, a lot of the detail we're working through right now, we probably could have figured this all out through the planning phase. Just by working through it, thinking through what each one would need, we could have started actually writing out each one of these prompts. But we're doing great here, and our agents are getting the work done for us. You can see there's different YOLO syntax for Gemini versus Codex, fast model, heavy model, base model. We can tweak our variables here for every prompt as we need, but this looks good. Let's go ahead and test it out. The advantage that we're getting to with this forking is starting to come alive here. Let me go ahead and commit everything here, and we're gonna open up a new Sonnet window, fork session, we'll use Codex, fast model. I'll say Codex CLI just to be super clear, fast model. Summarize what all of the .claude commands do. We're spinning up a brand new, so our agent is trying to do this work by itself. okay? This happens. Let's make sure that we're saying the right keywords here. Fork terminal, what did I say? Fork, I said fork session, all right? So let me just add this to the description of the skill so our agent knows fork session command exactly, right? Just to be a little bit more clear with our prompting. Don't assume that it's the model's fault. First assume it's your fault, and then if you really prompt engineer properly, then you can assume it's the tooling's fault, all right? Let's just run that again. Fork session, we want new codex CLI fast, summarize what all the blah, blah, blah do. There we go. So now it's running that skill for us. It can be so easy to just blame the model, but you really have to blame yourself first, blame your tooling, blame your understanding first, all right? More cases than not now, as we've talked about in previous videos, the limitation is not the models, it's not the agents, it's you and I, right? It's what we're doing with these tools. And I really got to open up permissions on this file. I'm just going to do that now. Copy, and I have a command for this. I'm going to close this one, cx this, there we go. That should open up permissions, okay? So if we open up the terminal here, there we go. We have a brand new agent running. We kick this off from our Claude Code agent. There we go, right? Very simple stuff, but you can see how powerful this can be. I talk about scaling your compute to scale your impact. One of the reasons I did this is for this reason, right? We can do things like this. Fork, new codex CLI fast model, and we'll test with Gemini here, right? Gemini CLI fast model. Use one fork per file. I'm going to say summarize what all of the star.md do. Okay, so let's be super clear about what's happening here. I'm saying fork a new Gemini CLI fast model. Okay, great. Use one fork per file. And I can be even clear here, right? Use one terminal fork create. Okay, so let's kick this off, right? Let's see if this works properly. And here, this is like prompt engineering, right? This is now we're getting to the space where we need to prompt engineer how this works exactly. So here we go. Are we using the skill here? We are. Fantastic. Okay, so that is running. Great. You can see the out in the return code. We're getting some good feedback, right? Good agentic code. And there we go. So we have 4 agents in new terminal windows, each looking at a different file. Claude Code is doing too much. Claude Code is great for this, and it's also not great for this. And by Claude Code, I also mean, Sonnet 4.5. It went ahead and did summaries itself. But if we hit terminal, this is the actual summary. This document describes how to set up a Claude Code agent and execute commands. This file describes how to execute a raw CLI command. Okay, great. So you can see these are working. And again, I really want to focus on scale, right? Why did I build this tool? Why do we need to fork sessions? It's so that we can, once again, on another dimension, scale our compute to scale our impact. With this skill, you can now spin up and fork. We're getting to the fork portion here in a second, but we can effectively fork context windows to operate in brand new context windows with new agents, or just run a CLI command. All right, so we're starting to see that value proposition come through here. The last piece we need to focus on here is making sure that we actually fork. What does that mean? We need to create a summary just like the compact command does. It summarizes all the existing messages and resets the context window. You always lose information when you run this, but it is, a good stopgap solution for resetting the context window while maintaining the current task at hand. So we effectively want to do that for our fork summary user prompt. We want to program our agent to use this when we say summarize, right? Or when we specify that we want to also summarize. Effectively, we need our agent to summarize the work it's done and then pass the summary into the agent and clearly state this is the previous summary and then fire the prompt. So we can set up this as a prompt template for our agent to run. I'll use AGP, and this will make sense as we build it out. So the key here is always to remember who's writing to who. We have an agent, base agent is writing to our fork agent. To be super clear here, we're going to pass this prompt into this agent. And let me just get rid of all this, right? And write it this way. And so this is the relationship, all right? So our base agent is going to write this prompt and it is going to communicate to the fork agent, okay? We can do this in the simplest way possible. Prompt, history, summarized user prompt. And we'll do this in YAML format, right? Just to make it super clear for our agent. This will be summarized user prompt. And we want objects here. And let's be even clearer, right? We have history here, and then we have summarized user prompt, and then we have response summary. And then we want to continue this pattern. And let's get our tabs right here. Make sure that everything is tabbed properly. This is the history of the conversation between the user and agent. Take this and use it to understand the next user's request, okay? And then we'll write that next user request. Fill in user prompt here for the fork. Okay, this is in fact a template meta prompt. Why is that? It's because we're having an agent, right? Our base agent is going to fill this out using this format, and then it's going to write this message, right, filled out to our fork agent as its starting prompt. Okay, and this is going to, create a simple, concise history, include summarized versions of your conversation with the user. This way, our fork agent has a history of the conversation and can better understand the user's request. Okay, so very powerful stuff here. Now we have this fork user prompt, nice and simple. You can make this a lot more complex. What do we need to do here? We need to make sure that we update our skill so that this is super, super clear. We should do this in a dedicated instruction here. So I'm going to use a H3 fork summary user prompts. So we need to set up the condition here. So if the user requests a fork terminal with a summary, then with the history of the conversation between you and the user so far, and include the next request. Exactly. Okay, examples. And so we need to be super clear here. This only works for our agentic coding tools. Okay, and I'll create a variable here because I don't want to keep rewriting this. Agentic coding tools, exactly. The tool must be enabled as well. All right, so here we're specifying our agentic coding tools, and now we'll be able to create a summary. This is where things get a little tricky and where the intelligence of the model really matters. So let me be more specific here with these summaries. Fork terminal, use Claude Code to XYZ, summarize work so far, include summary with summary. Now with this, we're going to run this as the prompt, right? And let me be super clear here. Then I'm going to tab into this. This will be what you pass into the prompt parameter of the agentic coding tool, okay? This should be everything we need to have a forkable conversation window to boot up new agents. Let's test it out. Let me just write a couple prompts here. What does FFmpeg do? I'm just setting up some history to be compressed and summarized. Are there any other tools like it? You can imagine you've been working with one agent for a while. Now we want to fork it. Okay, now we want to create a new conversation. Fork session, codex, CLI. Let's run fast again. Summarize work done. And you can kind of list this as attributes, right? Fork session, codex CLI, fast, summarize work done, right? So we're kind of enabling a bunch of features. And let me spell this properly. Summarize work done. And then here's the prompt. Understand this code base, then write a 20-line summary in the README. Okay, let's see if this works, right? We have fork activation, codex CLI. It's going to progressively disclose the work we want done fast, so it selects a model. It's going to summarize the work done. Okay, so there's a lot going on here, but it should all be handled in our skill. Okay, so let's see how this goes. Good. Fork terminal read, codex CLI read, fork summary user prompt read. There we go. Fork summary prompt with our conversation. Okay, so this is not right, but this is what it's going to pass into the agent. So you can see here, it's actually just updating this file. And let me go ahead and be clear with my instructions. If we open up the terminal here, we do see that this is the prompt that's running, and you can see it actually did pass the right prompt, but it updated the file. We don't want it to update the file. So let's be clear here. To be clear, don't update the file directly. Just read it and use it to craft a new prompt for the new fork agent. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and use the important information dense keyword so that the agent really respects this. Okay, but this is great, right? We did actually get this running, and if we scroll up here, you can see our summary, right? YAML summary, right? User prompt, agent response, user prompt, agent response, right? User asked, what does FFmpeg do? Explained it. Is there any other tool like this? Lists several other tools, right? So we are getting a good summary of the work done, right? We are effectively forking the context window, handing off context to another agent concisely. All right, so we're almost there. Let's go ahead and see if this, one line in our instructions worked. So we're going to clear. Actually, let's go ahead and resume that session, and I'm going to hit escape to roll this back. Right, so this is a cool feature inside of Claude Code. You can rewind history. I'm going to go back to this command here, and now I'm going to hit up, and now we're going to do that fork once again. It's reading all the files as expected. There we go, codex help. Now I'll fork the context window. I'll include the conversation history. There we go. Okay, there we go. So it didn't overwrite any file, and I actually forgot to revert this file from the change. So I'm going to hit Control Z there. Okay, and now check this out. Our agent, if we scroll up here, you can see we kicked off a new agent. We're using Codex 5.1 Mini, and here's the prompt. All right, so this is exactly what was passed in. Prompt history, we have a nice summarization of the previous conversation and the next user request. And right away, Codex kicked off, where we effectively forked the context window with a nice summary. And now it is understand this code base, write a 20-line summary and readme. And let's see what it's done here. Okay, so yeah, so this is a Codex high model, so you can see it's not formatted very well, but this is the advantage of the fork, right? We can now say improve formatting, right? Something like that, whatever you want to do. Okay, there we go. Very nice, right? Much better. Here we created a skill from scratch and we kind of walked through all the pieces of it. We put together a reusable prompt that our agent can operate. We have a dedicated tools directory. We have a cookbook of specific use cases and a specific tooling. And of course, we have that central skill.markdown file, the most important piece, with a couple of static variables that we can tweak and tune that our agent will, again, if it's sufficiently intelligent, the agent and the LLM will properly manage it. All right. This has been creating a skill from scratch. Skills are important because they put together reusable code and reusable prompts. Don't let any new grand feature release or model confuse you. The only things you need to focus on are the primitives that make it all up. The context, model, prompt, and tools, the core four. If you understand these, if you master these, you'll master the agent, you'll master engineering in 2025 and 2026. I'm going to clean this code base up a little bit, clean up the README. I'll fork some more agents to operate in parallel in new instances. This will be linked in the description for you so you can give this a shot and understand what we built out here from scratch, from the ground up. If you like this video format, kind of more raw agentic coding, where I show the whole process and kind of go behind the scenes, a lot less hype. If you like this, drop a comment, let me know. You know where to find me every single Monday. Stay focused and keep building.